Hi everyone. Hello. Thanks for joining. So a few people, let me just explain my slightly odd setup and angle. So I'm on my phone and also sharing my screen on my laptop. So I'm at a slightly strange angle. I don't know if any of you are struggling with Wi-Fi issues today, but we've had a few issues here. So apologies if it's slightly odd, and do shout, let me know if anything goes wrong, or you can't hear me or anything. We've got Aaron, who will be keeping an eye on the chat box, and if anybody has their hands raised, because I can't see when I'm sharing my screen. And I think we're just after 3, so we can get going. Anyone else that joins can catch up. But thank you, first of all, if you are in the UK and you've joined, because it's a beautiful day and I'm sure you'd all rather be outside in the park, so thank you. And just to talk about today, so we're just going to look at, it's an introduction to arts fundraising, so we're just going to look at the basics. Obviously, it's impossible to talk about fundraising in the arts at the moment without a heavy COVID-19 angle. So we will be looking at that. But it's just kind of covering the basics. So hopefully by the end, you should have an idea of how to approach fundraising in the arts, to understand what resources are out there at the moment, and to hear from others what other people are doing during COVID-19 and hopefully find some inspiration. So we'll be looking at the context that we're working in, the channels that are available, the resources that are available, and I'm hoping that there'll be quite a discussion. It may not work because we're virtual, but we'll try. So it's not just me talking for the whole time. I did have some polls and things, but we haven't quite been able to get them to work. So we'll see what we can do. But yeah, I think it'd be good to get to know each other, who else is on the call, and yeah, share stories and examples with each other. So to start with, here is my big face. I wanted to just talk to you about who I am and why I am talking at a festival for Arab women artists. So I met Asa, he heads up Arts Canteen, when I was head of fundraising at Rich Mix. And Asa asked me to host the workshop today, because as head of fundraising at Rich Mix, I have experience of fundraising in the arts. I also have experience of fundraising for a number of different charities. I was at Stonewall, the LGBT rights organisation, and my current main role is in chimpanzee conservation. So quite a broad range, which I think is often quite helpful when you're coming at something, if you can, bring a few different perspectives. And I will come on to diversity in the fundraising sector shortly, and how I hope that maybe next year it won't be me, but somebody different to talk to you about fundraising. So this was going to be a poll. I just wanted to get to know a bit about who we have on the call. So if you wouldn't mind putting your hand up for which one of the options represents you, and we'll see how this works. Aaron's going to help me with this. So how would you describe your role? Are you a fundraiser by profession? Put your hand up if that is you. Are you getting this, Aaron? I can't see anything from here.
I haven't got anything so far yet.
Okay, so put your hand up if you're an artist or creative professional who has to fundraise for work.
We've got 3, 4. Got 4 hands raised for that.
Great. Or if neither of those apply to you, put your hand up or comment in the chat box if it's relevant. I was just sort of trying to get a sense of who is a who's really a professional fundraiser and who's more of a creative person who needs to fundraise for their work. So it looks like we're more on the creative side today. Oh, so people are asking how they raise their hands. That's an option, isn't it, Aaron, on the...
Yes, so there's there should be a sort of button where you can push.
Is it next to your name?
Yeah, it should be next to your name.
It's in participants. You go to participants and it says raise hand.
Yeah, there's like literally, it shows participants and you just click, there will be a button there.
It's not so important, but you know, we're all learning new skills already. Okay, should we try again then, if people have found? So who on here is a fundraiser, professional fundraiser?
Got 3.
And who's an artist? We had 4 before, didn't we?
Yeah. Oh, we've got 5.
Great, so pretty good split. Great, thank you for bearing with us as well. And then let's try it on fundraising experience levels. So who would describe themselves as a complete beginner, so never done it before?
We've got 4.
4, okay, great.
Yeah.
Have some experience, so have tried fundraising a little bit.
Got 5 there.
And experienced.
We've got 4 there.
Okay, great. So I'm expecting you 4 to jump in and help me out as we go through. Thank you, that's really helpful. Just good to know that we have a full range today. And then because we're part of the AWAN Festival, Arab Women Artists Now, I was just really interested in the gender split today. Absolutely optional, don't feel that you have to disclose anything. But I was just interested in kind of who comes along to the event. So if you identify as male and don't mind participating, please put your hand up.
So we've got 5 raised hands.
5. If you identify as female and don't mind letting us know.
Well, 1, 2, 3, about 8.
8, great. And then other or prefer not to say?
We've got 2.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Really helpful. So again, a good mix and majority identifying as female, just like the fundraising sector. So I just, in response to, you know, me feeling slightly uncomfortable at hosting a fundraising event aimed at Arab women, I just wanted to point out that we do have a problem in the fundraising profession with diversity. So it's majority white, it's majority women, but not when you get to leadership roles. So directors of fundraising are majority male. And there's quite a low rate of people identifying as having a disability compared to the rest of the charity sector. So there is a piece of work happening with the Institute of Fundraising called the Change Collective, which I thought I would just mention today, as it would be great if people can get involved and try and change some of those stats. That would be really good to see. So thank you. And then coming on to arts fundraising as a profession. So often arts fundraising is slightly separate from the rest of the charity sector. We know that there are unique challenges with arts fundraising, as in often sort of, you know, working under immense pressure with not much in reserves and kind of dealing with really stressful day-to-day financial challenges. And this is just a personal opinion from what I've noticed, but I feel like fundraising staff in the arts sector are more likely to be part-time, maybe doing a couple of roles, or having their fundraising role as part of a portfolio of jobs that they do, or freelancing, or also creatives who are either fundraising for themselves or doing a bit of fundraising for an organisation on the side. So I think that's quite different to the rest of the fundraising sector, who are probably more likely to be sort of career fundraisers, and that for one organisation. And I don't think there's much available on the diversity of staff in the arts fundraising sector. So maybe that's something we can ask for. So again, the Institute of Fundraising have recognised this, and there is a special interest group called the Cultural Sector Network, who also have this RAISE initiative, which is part funded by the Arts Council. So do try and get involved there. They do a really great conference that you might already know about, where you can get quite cheap tickets if you get early bird tickets, and they have bursaries for young arts fundraisers. So yeah, I would suggest really getting involved with them. Their events are really good, and they're doing quite a few things throughout this period, which I'll come on to a bit later. So these are questions that we were going to look at as part of a poll. I thought I'd just leave them here, just so that we can think about them when we come on to our discussion. But I was interested in whether you've come here today with a particular fundraising need in mind, what your biggest fundraising challenge or concern is at the moment. I'm assuming it's COVID-19, but I didn't want to make too many assumptions. And whether you feel that you or your organisation have been quick to respond to COVID-19 in terms of fundraising. So that was going to be a poll, but let's bear those in mind for when we have a chat, because it would be good to understand how you're feeling about these things. So just I'm moving on to context. So I don't think we could, as I said, have a discussion today about arts fundraising without talking about COVID-19, particularly with the discussion that was happening in Parliament yesterday and the 5-step plan that's just been released for venues. So yeah, obviously the whole sector is worried and trying to campaign for the government in the UK to help more. So I just wanted to, I'm sure that you're all aware that the Arts Council have a lot of resources available on their website, and support packages. So I urge you to take a look. I'm sure you've also seen this already, but there is a protest being planned for the sector on the 11th of July. So try and lend your support if you can, if you feel able. There's a website as well, canyouhearthepeoplesing.co.uk, with more details. I'll also send a document around after with links to everything. I didn't put them in the slides, but we'll send them around after. And there's also organisations that you can apply to for help. So Acting for Others is a coalition of 14 charities who are there to support people who are struggling financially at the moment. Does anyone have anything to add at this stage? Happy for you to chip in or comment at any point. I saw some information in the chat around the Institute of Fundraising convention and offering free tickets for small charities. That's good. Thank you, Samuel. Okay, so the next point, so then as part of the resources that are available at the moment, there's a really good webinar from the New York State Council for the Arts. So it goes through fundraising myths and how to dispel them within your organisation, if that's relevant. So I'm not sure how these myths kind of resonate with you guys, but I've definitely heard all of these. So myth 1, it's not the right time to ask for support. Myth 2, there isn't much we can do to fundraise right now, so we should cut fundraising costs. Myth 3, virtual fundraisers won't be as financially successful as our live events. Myth 4, our organisation can't plan for financial year 2021 and beyond, and myth 5, our strategic plan isn't relevant anymore. So does anybody want to chip in around any of those myths? Have you heard them? Are there any that you're particularly concerned about, struggling with at the moment? So we could go through these in discussion as well, but yeah, the webinar does go through each one. But personally, I've definitely seen, so for myth 1, it's not the right time to ask for support. I've personally had this feedback from the board within my organisation, but so my current role is with a global charity, and we have different chapters in different countries, and absolutely the countries that are performing the best are talking to their supporters about their fundraising needs in a really open and honest way. And I think it's really the right time to be having those conversations. People are, for the first time, kind of open to hearing about your financial struggles and what's really going on in a way that I don't think has been possible previously. So I would really urge anybody who isn't already to really get your, if you have supporters, get them, bring them in, get them close to you, tell them what's really going on, what you're struggling with and what you need help with, and don't assume on their behalf that they're not able to help, or that they're prioritizing health causes over the arts, because, you know, without having those open and honest conversations, you won't ever know. So I would urge that as a first step. Myth 2, there isn't much we can do to fundraise right now, so we should cut fundraising costs and staff. I mean, I think this goes against what any fundraiser would believe. If you cut your fundraising costs and staff, you will just have to spend more in the future when you kind of try and get that going again. I think the best thing to do at the moment is to continue to fundraise, continue to plan, try and be innovative. There's a lot that can be done. Obviously, some traditional channels and traditional ways of fundraising will have to be cancelled and changed, but we're seeing so much innovation happening in the sector at the moment that we see it is possible. So yeah, it's all about really reviewing and being innovative and seeing what you can do for less budget rather than stopping it altogether. Myth 3, virtual fundraisers won't be as financially successful. I think this is also being proven to be incorrect. So I'm sure you will have all seen that there was a phase of charity quizzes in the UK that raised thousands of pounds. So I'm giving you an ape example because that's my other role, but the Orangutan Society managed to raise £20,000 in one night, and they're a fairly small organisation. So really kind of tapping into what people care about and what they want to get involved with. And I'm always a big advocate of making fundraising fun if you can, because people are more likely to get involved and give when they feel good about something rather than kind of feeling sad or bad about something. So yeah, that's a good example. Again though, you have to be careful not to kind of jump on something when it's too late. So I think being innovative rather than trying to copy is, you know, sometimes the best way. Myth 4, our organisation can't plan for financial year 21 and beyond. I think, again, as with point 1, being honest with funders and trustees and talking about, you know, we can't plan for what we don't know about, but there are things that, you know, you can assume and assumptions you can make. So so I think having a plan with caveats or contingencies is probably better than just abandoning any kind of planning process. And then myth 5, strategic plan isn't relevant anymore. Similar to myth 4, it's better to have a strategy and for it to be clear, but with the understanding that, you know, things might come along that mean you have to change. That's more attractive to funders than just kind of saying, you know, I don't know, and throwing everything up in the air. So that's the top myths. Does anyone have anything to add or ask or input at this stage? No, great, so we'll carry on. So I thought we'd just go through quickly by channel. And Aaron, sorry, would you mind just keeping an eye on the time for me, because I can't see it on either device?
Yeah.
Thank you. So arts fundraising by channel. So, and these are kind of in order of how I would expect an arts organisation to approach their funding. So, sorry, I'm looking for my drink. There it is. I assume that you would usually look for government funding sources first, Arts Council England, lottery funds, local authorities, see what's happening, see how your project or organisation relates to their criteria, and yeah, those processes are kind of usually fairly straightforward. You read the guidelines, you check if you meet the guidelines, and then you apply if you do. Let me know if you would like me to talk any more about Arts Council England. I'm assuming most people know the basics or know where to go and find that information, so I won't go through it in too much detail. Then you'd probably look at other trusts and foundations. So the Directory of Social Change, you have to pay to access their database, or usually when they're open you can go to their office in Holloway Road in London, and I believe they have an office in Liverpool as well, and use their computers and do some research on funders available. I did contact them, and if you get in touch, they will give you 4 hours access to the database for free, given that their offices are closed. So I just wanted to let you know about that. So it's a great offer. There's also a site called Charity Excellence, run by Ian McIntosh, and he has been gathering all kind of relevant funds linked to COVID-19 there, so that's really useful. And I've also, there's a spreadsheet that fundraisers have been inputting into, which is collecting all the relevant COVID-19 funds available. So I'll send the link to those around afterwards as well. Again, with similar to government funding, trusts and foundations, I always describe it as, you know, it's like a university dissertation. You read the guidelines, you make sure that your project fits the criteria, and it kind of usually walks you through it in a fairly common sense way. There's obviously a knack to applying for funds, so it's often good to check applications with a trust fundraiser, and you know, it's nice to be able to pay them. But what I have found it with the fundraising sector is that everybody is very open, willing to share. I'll share with you some really useful peer groups at the end that you can use, but I think you'd always be able to find someone to help you read through an application or check things over for you if you need. So I think that's always good to know. Corporates. So corporates is an interesting one. I feel like corporates is always the kind of fundraising that people think you do when they don't know much about fundraising. And in reality, you know, if you have a great corporate partnership, it can be amazing. They can give you lots of money, time, exposure. However, in times of recession and struggle like these, they can often be the first ones to reduce their donations because obviously they're worried about what's going to be happening. So in the last recession, I think corporate fundraising dropped by about 40% in a year worldwide. So it's definitely not as sustainable as individual giving, for example. So I think it's always good to approach it with that in mind, knowing that they are quite a lot of work to keep the relationship going, to make sure that the corporate is happy with the arrangement, and that you are not compromising too much on your side as well. Asking lots of people for small amounts, it's the most sustainable way of fundraising, but it's also quite expensive and resource heavy, especially in the beginning when you're setting it up. Major donors is a great one for smaller organizations or individuals, but again, it depends on, it depends on your access to people with lots of available income, and how comfortable you feel in approaching. But in terms of speed and being able to, fund a whole project, if you can find someone who's really interested in what you do, and happy to support, then major donors is a great channel for funding. Other ways of fundraising from individuals, obviously donations, all online, I would imagine at the moment. So making sure that you have a great website and social media presence. I've seen lots of great crowdfunding initiatives happening, especially with theatres. Going back to the point around that you can be really honest with people at the moment. I've seen theatres saying, we've only got reserves to last us 1 month. We'll have to close unless we raise £50,000 as an example from the Landmark in South London. They managed to raise in a very short space of time. So there's some really successful crowdfunding happening. Peer-to-peer is great and especially successful in the UK. As we saw with the London Marathon when it was cancelled, but people still did challenge events at home to raise money for their favourite charities. So that's always a nice one if you've got a fairly active and passionate group of supporters, and a database is key for this kind of fundraising. So I would say that if you didn't have a really strong database of supporters before lockdown, it might be a fairly difficult one to get going now, although very happy to be proved wrong, because I'm sure you can generate support online if your project is, resonates well enough. Do we have a chat there? Just saw something flash up. Oh, explain crowdfunding in a bit more detail. Yes, sure. So crowdfunding is it's usually on a third-party website. So there are special sites that host crowdfunding initiatives, and it's usually when you have a certain deadline and a clear target. So the Landmark is a good example. They needed to raise £50,000 by a certain deadline, or they would have to close the theatre. And then lots of people contribute. There was an example from my local area as well, where the community cafe in my local park was going to have to close unless they raised, I think, £30,000. They managed to get that matched by Sport England, because they do a lot of events for young people. So matched funding is also a great incentive. So people knew that if they put in £5, that would become £10. And the cafe itself offered incentives, which is also another feature of crowdfunding. So if you gave £20, I think when the cafe reopened, you can go and get a bit of cake and a cup of tea. So venues can do that with tickets, that kind of thing. Aaron, can you keep me posted on the chat box? Is that all right? Sorry.
Yeah, sure. I think someone mentioned something about Kickstarter. Basically, crowdfunding sites like Kickstarter typically charge 5 to 10%. Do you ever encourage artists or small artistic entities to run their own crowdfunding from their own websites? Someone has asked.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, and I think it's the same with all websites. You will have seen that Just Giving came under fire for for the amount of money and fees they would have been taking from Captain Tom's walk, and I think they ended up waiving it because yeah, when it's all added together, a percentage can be a huge amount. I think the key to that is kind of shopping around. There are sites that are waiving their fees at the moment for COVID-19, so they're worth looking into. Again, I can send a list of those afterwards if that's helpful. And I'm just thinking about running it from your own website versus using a third party. I guess, yeah, that's fine, because it's about, as long as you already have the ability to take donations, and you can, I mean, the key elements are that you have a time scale and a target, and that you can then keep people updated on how it's going, and keep people, keep refreshing the message and letting them know how near to the target you are. But yeah, there's no reason that you can't do that yourself. I guess the benefit of the third parties is that people who wouldn't normally see your cause could come across it and support you, rather than just your existing followers. But yeah, I think the key in this time is to just be as creative as possible. And I'm all about, doing things yourself if you can, rather than outsourcing unnecessarily. So yeah, I think as long as the features there, it's all about the urgency and yeah, really making people put their hand in their pocket. So the urgency, the comms around it, being able to reward people, thank them, as long as you can do all those things, then I think it's fine. Was Samuel saying PayPal don't charge anything?
So someone has also mentioned in the chat, Lynn, they've said, what would you say to artists who are uncomfortable with the idea of crowdfunding?
Okay, that's interesting. Would you like to talk a bit more about that? What makes you uncomfortable about it?
Hi. So yes, I'm the person who posted that comment. I would say, as someone who's used to being self-sustainable as far as possible, it's something that exists quite beyond my comfort zone. I think the part of my main motivations for looking for support would be perhaps help further the cause behind what I'm doing. So the finance side or asking for support there, perhaps because it's not at the top of my list, but it is on the list of priorities. It's something that I'm not fully acquainted or comfortable with, and that's specifically with regards to crowdfunding. Does that help clarify the question?
Yes, thank you. And yeah, it's a really interesting point, and I kind of touched on it when I mentioned major donors. I think with all fundraising and all of these channels, a lot of it depends on your kind of personality type and how comfortable you feel. And I think that's why a lot of people feel fairly comfortable with the Arts Council and trusts and foundations, because it's written and you're making a case, and those bodies exist to fund you, and you either qualify or you don't. So it's very kind of straightforward. I think in terms of all the other channels, corporates, major donors, crowdfunding, if you're comfortable with asking for money, there's going to be a difference between whether you're comfortable talking one-on-one with a major donor and kind of selling yourself to one person, or talking about yourself to many people and selling yourself that way. And I think that's the unique thing about fundraising in the arts, isn't it? If you're selling yourself and your work, you're so much closer to it than I am, for example, in my conservation role. I'm selling the cause and the need, so it's not about me. So I completely understand that when it becomes about you, it's slightly different. And yeah, I understand that the crowdfunding element would be tricky. I'm just thinking, because because I am a fundraiser, I'm obviously not uncomfortable asking for money. So try to imagine if I was. So yes, I understand if it's about you, but I guess like you said, if it's a real, but I am uncomfortable asking for money if there isn't a real need. So that's why crowdfunding for me, it has to tick those boxes. Is there a genuine and urgent need? So if there is for you, and if you need money, otherwise you can't continue your creative practice, then I would think about that. What are people going to be missing out on because you can't produce your work? And would they consider paying it forwards in some way? So is there something you could offer, so a ticket to your next performance, but they're just paying you up front so that you can create the work? Is there something, in that way of thinking about it, that might make it slightly less personal or awkward?
Yeah, thank you.
Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does. I think the idea of something in exchange can definitely alleviate any sorts of uncertainties around that.
I think that was the point of crowdfunding in the beginning. So it was kind of, I think charities have kind of jumped on it quite recently, but I think in the beginning it was around things like, I want to set up a vegan cafe in my area, but I need the money to do it. And you're also testing the appetite for your idea as well.
True.
So you're kind of, you're future-proofing it in some way. And I know lots of artists who wouldn't have usually have now taken to Twitch, haven't they, and Patreon to ask their supporters to kind of fund their creative practice. And I know a lot of people have felt uncomfortable about doing that. But again, it would come back to the point I made earlier, which is about try not to assume on someone else's behalf that they wouldn't want to give you money, because if they value your work and your creative output, then they'll want to fund that. And yeah, so I'm sure there are many more pieces of training around sort of how to practice these things in a safe space as well, so that if you do have to go out there and ask for money, that you feel comfortable doing it. Were there any more chats, Aaron? I'm trying to check, but I'm conscious I look weird when I do it. Okay.
There was a few people just talking about crowdfunding in general. Chris-C SC has mentioned many people would like to support their friends' projects, but they don't themselves have £1,000 to do it. With crowdfunding, you can be involved in supporting a project for only £20 or so.
Yeah, exactly, or even less. I do think, there's a joy in being able to support things and being able to see something that wouldn't have been created come to life because you were able to come together and make that happen. And that's the point of crowdfunding, really. It's a lot of people coming together to make it happen and feeling that same that same sense of input that a major donor or a corporate might feel when they've invested a lot of money, because there's a belief or a theory in fundraising that everybody gives what they can to the causes that mean a lot to them. So if you're a major donor, that just means that you have that amount of income available. But for someone else, £5 might be the maximum that they have available, but it's still important to give them the same feeling that you would give to a major donor of how much that donation means to you and how much it's allowed the work to happen. So another way of thinking about crowdfunding is bringing people together, making them feel good, that kind of pay it forwards kind of principle. Yeah. And similarly, events, we're seeing, I mentioned the quiz, lots of virtual events that I think people would have said they won't work before COVID, and maybe they wouldn't have worked before, but now we're seeing that, you know, they really do. And if they are organized in the right way, they can still feel like a physical event. I mean, I've been clubbing at Dalston Superstore and it felt almost like going out. There's so much that's been developed during this time that we shouldn't, even when everything goes back to normal, we should still remember that that technology is available and that it is possible to bring people together in that way. Merchandise is another one that's that sort of theory of exchange, which we were talking about. So in a lot of my fundraising, I like to create merchandise that people want, so that the decision to buy it comes from a different part of the brain than the decision to make a donation. They want something, so they buy it, and then you can educate them about the cause and afterwards. And then finally, there are local and national initiatives to keep an eye out for. So Save Our Venues is one that Rich Mix has joined up with. And yeah, there are usually, I know that Tower Hamlets in London in particular is quite good for kind of matching fundraising and encouraging local initiatives to regenerate buildings and parks and things. So it's worth looking out for initiatives as well that you can jump on and be part of something bigger. So that was my quick run through of channels. Does anybody want to go back to any? It was just kind of really to give you the main, just a flavour of the different features of each one, really. And I really appreciate the discussion around crowdfunding as well. It's nice to hear what you're thinking and what your challenges are. Does anyone else have anything to add? Anything I've missed? Okay, so I did think that we could have a bit of a discussion here. Oh, so Jess has asked if I could give an example of a local initiative. So yeah, the one I mentioned was in Tower Hamlets, where recently, if you had a crowdfunding project, they would match, the local authority would match fund it. So there were lots of organisations applying with projects there. I can't think of any other local initiatives like that. I guess I was assuming that other regions and local authorities would have similar, but does anyone else have any examples of local campaigns like that one to share? I'm sure it's not unique to Tower Hamlets. I'm sure others must. I'll have a look though, Jess, and see if I can find something and send it around afterwards. What was that? RB, what was that one? Sorry, it disappeared. RBKC, Kensington and Chelsea. Okay, so is that a similar? Yeah, similar. So sort of matched funding. Wasn't there a Love Hackney initiative? And yeah, there's often, I think the local ones are generally kind of to regenerate an area or galvanize people around a certain issue within an area. Yeah, so I will dig some more out, Jess, and send them around. Okay, so we've got 15 minutes, so I will whiz on, but please do chip in. I'd love to hear your questions, experiences, any sort of myths that you've been hearing from your organisation or from the sector. So yeah, just chip in whenever you have anything to add. So just, and I was hoping you could, yeah, you could add to this slide. I've been seeing lots of initiatives that have impressed me. during this time. So I recently just saw that Wireless Festival, which would have been taking place in Finsbury Park, is now going to be doing a virtual festival. So they will be playing in Alexandra Palace, but hosting it online. So it's good to see that festivals are still able to do that, and I hope that they are still able to generate some income. I know that festivals in particular are struggling. I work a bit with the Green Man Festival and Shambhala Festival, and I saw an email from Shambhala saying that they will struggle to sort of come back from this if they can't generate some income in this year. So they're having an online auction, which is another good idea if you have any kind of celebrity or obviously you all have artist friends, so if people have interesting things to donate, online auctions and things like that can work well. So yeah, festivals are trying to be creative so that they can come back next year. Mentioned the Landmark that managed to raise, they managed to link their fundraising need with their 25-year anniversary, so they had people doing challenge events for them. As I said, they were able to be really honest with their supporter base and say that they only had 1 month of reserves, so they would have to close. They'd be forced to close if people didn't support. So that was great. They obviously had a strong supporter base who felt very strongly about saving the venue, so that's great to see. And then Mitch Mix, I thought, deserved points just for the name of their Twitch event that they hosted, which was Disco Inferno. It's the first time they've done that sort of event. So it was a virtual cabaret event with different performers submitting performances, and people could watch it online on Twitch and were encouraged to donate as well. So that was a fun event. Has anyone else seen anything that they were impressed by or would like to share? Just checking in the chat. Yeah, okay. And then,
I've seen a couple of things.
Yes.
This is Samuel,
Hi, Samuel.
talking. Hi, I'm a member of the fundraising team at English National Ballet, but I've recently transitioned back into the arts after being in the for-profit sector. I think kind of particularly thinking of digital and using that to almost in a sense kind of crowd fundraise. I know there's those kind of big examples of the National Theatre, who are very fortunate because they already have their kind of NT Live that they show in cinemas, and they've been able to adapt that for, online, and they've been able to take advantage of YouTube Giving, which you can use as a platform for fundraising and live stream performance. I think their first performance, I think it was either Frankenstein or One Man, Two Governors, which was probably about 2 months ago, ended up raising, I think, over $50,000.
Wow.
But I think that can also translate kind of down as well to medium-sized and small organizations, and even individual artists, because I think even before the pandemic, almost kind of similar to crowd fundraising, you could see artists where like if I'm particularly thinking here of kind of painters and cartoonists and kind of watercolor, that sort of thing, where for £5 you could ask for something to be drawn, or you could do a live stream of you creating a work, whether that be theatre, dance, or otherwise. And I think those, I think particularly of drag artists, and thinking what you were saying about Darston Superstore, who are doing entire online shows and are either asking for support themselves or asking for support towards other charities. I think that's seen a real kind of boom, and a way for them to kind of provide entertainment and almost kind of give us the much needed distraction from the realities out away from our computers at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's always a kind of decision, isn't there, around should I be giving content for free because everybody's struggling and needs entertainment during lockdown, versus should I charge for it because we need to fundraise and we have an urgent need. And I think that's still kind of always the tussle, and there's fortunately lots of examples of people doing it in different ways, and people kind of value both as well. So if it's a free offer, like the first Dalston Superstore event was free, but then during the evening there were lots of calls to support trans or drag artists without work at the moment, and that's really powerful, is hearing about something when you're in the middle of experiencing something, which works really well. At the same time, if you have to pay for content because you would normally be going to see it in a theatre, I think people understand that as well. So yeah, it's great that there's kind of the full spectrum of ways of fundraising as well, that people can learn from, try different things, see what works for them and their audiences. I really like the engagement element that you're talking about as well, and I think that's been key for this, hasn't it? People are not so willing to just kind of sit there and receive entertainment, and it feels like there's a lot more opportunity to get people involved and be more interactive with it. So yeah, there's lots of exciting ways you can take it, really.
Yeah, and I think going back to one of your myths earlier as well, as now's not ask people. I mean, speaking from the experience of our own kind of COVID-19 response campaign, because we've been putting out live performances, the donations that we've been getting, 70% of them have been coming from people who have never donated to us before. And I mean, we have such a small database as it is anyway, because we don't sell our own tickets. We always go to or tour to different venues, so we don't see any of that kind of data for us to be able to market to or ask those people to support us after they've seen one of our shows. So actually being able to reach them online has all of a sudden attracted all these people that we sort of knew were out there, who kind of came to see our shows or supported us, and there's suddenly been this massive influx of donations. So, and speaking to a couple of other arts organisations last week, lots of them are seeing the same, where they've maybe had casual audience members or casual visitors to their art gallery. You know, I think people in the wider society are recognizing the benefit of what art brings to our not only to them mentally and physically, but also to our wider economy. And I think people now are starting to see exactly what art means to the UK.
Great, that's really good to hear. Thank you, Samuel. And let's hope so, given that the government don't seem to be quite getting the message yet. Let's hope that that translates into some support for the sector as a whole as well. But thank you, that's really great. So yeah, I feel the same. It can be an advantage or an opportunity, but obviously, you know, the emotional kind of impact of the pandemic as well means some, you know, it's not, I guess it's not really, it wasn't that natural to kind of be completely innovative and jumping on things immediately, because we all had to go through a process of kind of changing and mourning and whatever else. So so I think it's fine not to, if people are still thinking about what they can try, I don't think it's too late. Just yeah, there's a lot to learn from, so it's a good opportunity. And then just to finish, because we're nearly out of time, just a list of things that are out there, and as I said, I'll send a list with links. So the Arts Council have lots of info. Directory of Social Change, I mentioned these before. I find these groups really useful. So there's the Institute of Fundraising Cultural Sector group. Fundraising Chat is a really great and active group on Facebook, and I feel that arts fundraisers are quite underrepresented on there at the moment, so please join. There's also the COVID-19 charity preparation group on Facebook, which is quite active. I encourage you to join. There's a podcast that's been interviewing development staff, development directors from different organisations every week. So I'll send you a link. There's some interesting ones there. And there's a couple of events coming up really soon. So the People Speak Talkioki is on Tuesday, and that's free. And that's a really great kind of energetic format where people are kind of discussing and debating. So I'd encourage anyone to go along to that. And then there's also a conference coming up on the 18th of August around the sector, and I think that's £85. But I'm sure there are offers to be had if you'd like to attend. I'm saying that based on nothing, but yeah, so there's lots going on at the moment, and we'll send out some information afterwards.
Just one good afternoon to all, and all participants here on behalf of Arts Canteen and the AWAN Festival. Thank you so much, Lynn, for your contribution. That was really a great and very helpful insights of your experience of the fundraising. And also I would like to thank Aaron, who is the behind the scene for organizing this session as well, and to all the participants again. We will be sending some materials alongside the survey, as Lynn mentioned earlier. So good afternoon all, and keep safe, and thank you so much. Lynn, the last word is for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Asa, and thanks everyone. Go and enjoy the sun.